We now return to our regularly scheduled program. Already in progress. Hey folks, this is a 97 Ford F Superduty. It's got the 7.3 power smoke and a ZF5 manual transmission. The customer complaint is that the output shaft seal on the transmission leaks and he would like it replaced. Sounds simple enough, but it got out of control pretty quickly. Let me show you what we're dealing with. There's a parking brake built into the back of the transmission. And she's had a rough time. I've pulled the drive line off and with great difficulty, I have removed the brake drum. I pretty much had to melt it with the torch to get it off. The brake shoe lining, it's seen better days, to put it that way. So both brake shoes are shot, the rear seal is shot, and I think the brake drum is shot. I'm guessing they left the parking brake on and took it for an extensive drive. Probably didn't notice with all that power stroke torque. Anyway, they got it smoking hot. Melted the linings off the shoes, and I'm guessing they just warped the crap out of this brake drum. I think this is stamped steel. It's not cast iron, and it must have just tightened it up on the hub. Anyway, this is not a fun job, not by any stretch of the imagination. So you can't just pull this hub off to replace the seal. We actually have to remove the entire parking brake housing from the back of the transmission, and there's a bearing on the front and the back of that hub that we'll have to remove from the inside, press the shaft out, and then we can get to the seal. Bolts are out. Should just come off there, I think. Must be a dowel pin or something in there. There it is. It's a self-contained unit. It has a check plug here and a vent, and it has its own oil for the bearings. There's a seal here and a seal down here. Anyway, we had some fluid in here between the transmission and this housing. There should not be any oil there. So either this seal is leaking or the transmission output shaft seal is leaking, or more likely it's both. So we'll probably just go ahead and replace them all. Anyway, I've got to unstake this nut. I think somebody's had all this stuff apart before. This is like Loctite 515 or something here. Should be a gasket, I think. Okay. Takes a 2 9/16 socket. So I've got the studs straddling the back of my vise, hoping that it will hold it. Oh yeah. Okay, looks like a shield of some kind. And then there's a big seal. Yeah, of course it's going to leak everywhere. Okay, there's the seal ring, and it's got an O-ring inside. Design. Okay. Guess that's done. All right, folks. Some time has passed. Quite a bit of time, actually. It has not been easy to get parts for this contraption. The only place I could find that even listed parts for it was Allstate Gear, and they had a listing for everything I wanted except for the drum. So I bought it, took them a couple weeks to ship it out, and I'm not kidding, the day that the stuff arrived, I got an email telling me that they didn't have 2 of the seals that they said they had, and they were refunding my money. So it wasn't a big deal. I was able to get them through National, but still, makes me mad. If you're gonna have a website, there's 2 things you have to have on there if you're gonna sell stuff: a price and an availability. And if you say something's available, it should be available. Now, I suspect a lot of these small companies don't actually have any inventory. They just know what the part numbers are, and when you order it from them, they order it from the actual manufacturer. Anyway, the drum, as far as I can tell, is not available. I don't know if it's not being made anymore or if it's just out of stock. Anyway, I found one at a local junkyard. It's better than the one we pulled off. I pretty much had to melt this one. It might be okay. I mean, even if it's warped, doesn't really matter because this is only used for parking. It doesn't get used while the truck's in motion. But I like this one better, so we're gonna swap it out. I've got a new dust shield, new set of shoes, a nut, an O-ring, set of springs. This is a gasket that goes between this gizmo and the transmission. There's the 2 seals, and that's a new seal for the back of the transmission. So we gotta take it a little bit further apart, and then we can start putting it back together. Well, I've never worked on one of these ZF parking brakes before. I can't believe how poorly thought out this thing is. I mean, they gave 0 consideration to disassembly. As far as I can tell, you can't even get the shoes off of it without destroying something. So the current problem is this seal cannot be removed without removing this bearing. This bearing is in good shape, so I don't want to destroy it. I'm hoping we can just pull it off here. I don't know how we're going to get it back together once we do that. Guess we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. If they would have just made this shoulder a little bit bigger so that the seal was bigger than the bearing, wouldn't be a problem. Just barely wide enough. All right, I need something to fit in there. That's not it. Can I do this without poking out both eyes? I feel like I should be able to. That is cheesy. So I'm not 100% sure how you're supposed to even assemble it. I think we're supposed to install this seal first, and then we install the shoes and the anchor plate and all that stuff, and then this shaft gets pressed. Well, no, the bearing's got to go in before the seal. Good thing we thought about that. Okay, so we got the bearing, then the seal. That would have been bad. Take me another week to get a seal. Okay, so we got the bearing, then the seal, then dust shield, then this thing. however it goes. All right, let's go ahead and put the seal in. I'm pretty confident about that. That looks good. Put a bit of grease on the lip there. Ah, crap. Got a problem. Well, okay. It's not as bad as I thought. I thought that was the spring out of the new seal, but that's the spring out of the old seal. It just got wrapped up around that bearing. Good thing I saw that. Okay. Carry on. So it's going to be that guy and that guy. And then this slips together like that. Now, which one is which? I don't remember. Let's try it like that and see what happens. This part really makes my brain hurt. How could you ever get those shoes back on and those springs back on without tearing the whole gizmo apart and pressing this shaft out of the end? I can't see any way. That's crazy. Why would they not make the brake shoes serviceable, separate from all the bearings and all the other crap? Yeah, you got carried away there, buddy. Are you tired, pup? You're limping again, pup. Everybody always wants to know what's wrong with him. The only problem is he's going on 9 years old and he never sits still. So yeah, just like the rest of us who are getting up there in age, he's got a few aches and pains. Vet says you're healthy as a horse though, aren't you, pup? Alright, we need our little shim. That should set the bearing in play. And then the bearing. That guy. Yeah, and then the seal. And then this thing must go on top of it. I'm going to go back and check my video just to be sure. I think that's right. Alright, we do in fact have the order correct. I'm going to pack this guy full of some grease. Just keep that spring in there. Well, service data is pretty much worthless on this thing, but the internet says 220 foot-pounds, which is a lot. I cleaned up the drum, but I'm still not happy with how it fits. Just a little bit too tight. And there's no adjustment on those shoes. I don't know. Stay. The old drum's about 20 thousandths bigger. I don't know. I think the only option I have is to set this up in the lathe and try to skim the inside. I think it's going to ring like a bell, but we'll try it. It's better than I expected. You see how bad it runs out. I think we're ready to install. What a pain in the ass. I ended up having to put the drum back in the brake lathe 2 or 3 more times. Just skim a little more material out until it would spin freely. It's still just a little bit tight, but I think she'll wear in pretty quickly. I wish I could have gotten a new drum. That would have made life a lot easier. Actually, Allstate Gear sells a complete rebuilt parking brake unit. It's pretty pricey. I think it's like $1,200, but honestly, I think it's worth it. Especially if you're a DIY guy, you don't have a lot of fancy tools. Even for me in the shop, the amount of time I got screwing around with this thing, it probably would have been worth it. Anyway, let's put it in. Here we go. Got the back of the transmission cleaned up, and I installed a new seal on the output shaft. Cool. Yeah, that wasn't very smart, was it? Well, that was way harder than it needed to be. All right, folks. Good news and bad news on the Super Duty. The good news is the parking brake seems to work fantastically. The bad news is now the clutch is goofed up and I don't have the keys. Stand by. Can't go far without the keys to your car. Alright, this thing starts kind of hard. Yeah, that's a lot of cranking. Glow plugs are working. I'm sure of it. Look at the voltage. Yeah, this transmission is not quite right. Won't stay in reverse. The problem is with the clutch master cylinder push rod, which is that guy right there. So the clutch pedal's over here. It goes through a pivot, and then there's kind of a little bell crank on the end with a pin, and there's a plastic bushing in the push rod, and that push rod actually will pop off the pin. I replaced the bushing and it just tore up the new bushing, so the push rod is all egg-shaped. There we go. So that's the clutch safety switch for starting. Now to get the push rod out, there's a clip inside the master cylinder. I watched some YouTube videos about this, and everybody said to make a tool to slide down over the push rod and release the clip. So I got a piece of vinyl tubing here that I slit down the side. We're gonna try that. So if this doesn't work, we can just pull the master cylinder off the firewall. It's probably what we're gonna have to do. I managed to get the push rod out. I had to use a thinner piece of black vinyl tubing, and then I had to pull the clutch master cylinder off the firewall. I think somebody's been messing around here. There's a bunch of washers stacked up on the firewall. That doesn't seem right. Anyway, focus. That's what we need to fix. It's all egged out. Right. There we go. Now this is the kit we're going to install. Basically this heim joint here is going to bolt to the bell crank, and then we have to cut the end of this push rod off, slide it inside that heim joint. Look at that. Okay, now I think we're going to go ahead and file that flat a little bit longer. There we go. And we'll kind of angle it a little bit so that the set screws trying to hold the heim joint on. In the machine tool world, we call that a whistle notch. That should do it. I think I finally got it where I want it. I ended up taking the push rod back out and trimming a little bit off the end. It was just a little bit too long. But you don't want to trim too much because that heim joint will hit the clutch switch Looks like this one actually hits just a little bit. I don't know, I guess we'll see how it does. A lot of the forums I was reading, people were saying they had to take the clutch switch clear off and just bypass it because there wasn't enough room for it. Which that's not the end of the world. The one on my own truck is bypassed. Doesn't hurt anything. Okay, we're done down here. Oh yeah. Parking brake is pretty solid. Cool. The only problem is the warning light doesn't work. Pretty sure it should have a brake light somewhere. But she's geared low. There you go, folks. Fixing a ZF transmission mounted parking brake. That was quite a job. It was way more difficult than I anticipated. I think really the way to go, especially if you don't have a lot of fancy tools, just buy the complete rebuilt unit from Allstate Gear and slap it on and call it a day. Especially if you had to get into the bearings. Our bearings were good, so we didn't have to mess with that, but if you had to install new bearings and you had to shim that stuff and figure out the end play and all that, I mean, you could wrap up a lot of time in one of these little units. Anyway, thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. I said all those nice things about this Unicorn Dodge, and she stabbed me in the back. I think there's going to be a part 2. Probably with the involvement of area diesel service. So stand by for that.